The way I found out my boyfriend is cheating is actually by what he said in his sleep. So we were laying in bed, and in his sleep he said a girl's first and last name. And usually when people are sleep talking, you know, it's hard to make out or it just doesn't really make sense. No, this was clear as day. Straight out of a movie. So I get out of bed and I look up this girl on Facebook, and I notice how she's married and she has kids, so I don't really think too much of it. And when he wakes up in the morning, I ask him about her, and he was like, oh, it's just some girl I went to high school with. But I wasn't fully convinced, so I messaged the girl and I was like, hey, I'm so-and-so's girlfriend. I was just wondering if you guys have talked recently. And the way she responded is what put me even more on edge. She was like, you need to mind your own business. You're just his crazy ex-girlfriend. And I'm like, excuse me, I am not his ex-girlfriend. He's living in my house. I am paying for his phone bill. He drives my car to work. He's very much my boyfriend. Well, then I get this message from a completely different girl. So at this point, I decide to do a little bit more digging. Since it's only my name on the phone plan, I'm able to view all of the phone calls from all of the phones on that line. So I start looking through his phone calls, and I notice a 45-minute phone call with a number I didn't recognize. So when I asked him about this, he was like, I've never even made a 45-minute phone call. The phone company must have made a mistake. Yeah, okay. At this point, this is all the proof I need, so I'm like, you need to leave. You need to get out. And he's giving me this huge sob story about how he has nowhere to go. Honestly, not my problem. You should have thought about that before. So a couple of days later, I'm texting him and I'm asking for the phone back. He told me that he already talked to a cop about it and he's not giving me my phone back because there's nothing I can do. So there may have not been anything I could do to get it back, but I decided to report the phone stolen. So at least that way he couldn't use it either. And he had actually left his car at my house. So he told me when he came to pick up the car, he would also give me the phone. I'm like, okay, perfect. That works for me. It's the day after he's supposed to pick up the car and I haven't heard from him. So I'm trying to reach out to him and I am blocked on absolutely everything. So what do? Yep, I tow his shit. I had to pay over $1,200 to cancel the phone line early and to get a new phone, so it brought me a little joy that he was at least inconvenienced by this as well. When I posted this on my TikTok last time, he had actually commented on the video and then tried to make a video on his TikTok trying to defend himself. But he deleted the TikTok before I could ever see. Everyone in the comments were telling me that it made him look even more guilty. And since you guys had his TikTok, you guys were blowing up his comments, and I posted a screenshot on my Instagram of some of those comments you guys left. But I always say, what goes around comes around.
Story time, and this is a really freaky story, and I've tried to share it before on TikTok, but after I shared it, some really weird things started happening to me, so I deleted it. But I'm gonna try again. Everyone's name has been changed just for safety reasons. But okay, here goes. Again, it's really freaky. Be ready. 2 years ago, my friend named Ashley was in London for a work thing. She normally lives in a different country. But so she was in London for a work thing, and so I told her that she could stay with me. This one night, Ashley decided to meet up with her friend John, who she hadn't seen in a few years, because John also lived in London. So Ashley and John went for dinner. At dinner, everything was fine. Everything was completely normal. And halfway through, Ashley went to the bathroom. When she came back from the bathroom, John started acting really, really weird. And he was like, Ashley, we have to leave right now. We have to go. And she was like, what are you talking about? We haven't even finished our food. Are you okay? And he was like, no, we just have to go. I already paid. It's fine. Let's just go. Please, let's go. So they leave the restaurant, and then they're walking down the street. And John started telling Ashley, for the past 8 months, I've been followed and I'm still being followed, and that's why we had to leave the restaurant, because there are people there that were watching us, and my life is in danger, and now I think that your life is in danger too. I have to do part two. Part two. So John and Ashley are walking down the street, and he's telling her, like, I needed to tell you because I think your life might be in danger now too, because you just hung out with me, and I just needed you to know, like, just in case. So Ashley ended up coming back to my place after that whole thing happened, and she told me what happened because she was genuinely freaked out. And we couldn't figure out whether John was just mentally unstable or whether this was actually true, because he was fine up until that halfway point at dinner, so we couldn't figure it out. So then what we decided to do is call Ashley's brother Tom, because Tom also knew John, so we wanted to get his opinion on it, like what he thought was going on, whether John was okay or whether there was something going on. So we decided to call John through Ashley's phone, so we do a FaceTime audio call. And when we call, a woman answered the phone, and she was like, wait, Ashley, hold on 1 second. Ashley, don't hang up the phone, Ashley. 1 second. So Ashley then hung up the phone, and I was like, that didn't sound like your brother. And she was like, I don't know who that was. I have to do a part 3. Part 3. So we were really freaked out because we were like, who answered that phone call? Because Ashley did not recognize that voice. So what we decided to do was contact Tom through my phone. So we contacted Tom and he was like, no, my phone didn't ring. I don't know what you're talking about. And we were like, well, does someone have access to your iCloud? Like, could someone have signed in? And he was like, no one has my password. And we were like, well, is your computer on somewhere? And like someone answered it from your computer because it rang on your computer. He was like, no, my computer's off. I don't know what you're talking about. So Tom then looked at his phone log on his phone and it said, FaceTime audio call answered on another device. So someone had intercepted that call, basically. So what we think happened is what John was saying was true, and these people didn't want Ashley to tell Tom what happened, so they intercepted the call. That's the only explanation that we have because we don't know who else answered this phone call. I mean, it could be a coincidence, but what are the odds that this one time that we called Tom, someone else picks up, and how did they know Ashley's name? They knew it was, they kept saying, Ashley, hold on. Part 4. So that woman who intercepted that phone call knew Ashley's name, and she kept saying, Ashley, hold on, Ashley, don't hang up the phone, Ashley, 1 second. So like, it's as if they were trying to keep Ashley on the phone to track her location. Maybe, I don't know, it was just really weird. But what's very, very weird on top of all of this is I shared this story on TikTok in August. And the day that I shared it, I got an Instagram friend request from Ashley's mom. But the thing is, I was already friends with Ashley's mom on Instagram. This was a second account. And the second account messaged me saying, hey, what are you up to? So I was like, that's weird. Let me just message Ashley and like ask her if her mom made a second Instagram account. So I messaged Ashley and she was like, no, that's an imposter account. That's not my mom. What are the odds that the day I shared that story on TikTok, there was a fake Instagram account from her mom? Also, her mom her mom has 100 followers on Instagram. Why would someone pretend to be her? It's not like she's a celebrity and there's like imposters. It's just really weird. Until yesterday, which is really weird because I posted this story 2 days ago and something weird happens to me yesterday. It could be completely unrelated because I live in a city and these things happen all the time, I think. So this could have nothing to do with the story, but I'll still tell you what happened just so you know because it's a bit weird. So yesterday, I was in my flat with my neighbor because we were hanging out and it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was daytime and we're hanging out and then suddenly a car alarm starts going off and it was going off and off and off and off. And after a while I was like, I feel like that's my car. I feel like that's my car alarm that's going off. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like that's my car. So he was like, okay, let's just go down and see. So we go down together and we go to the street because my car is parked in the street because I live in London. And we go up to my car and yes, it was my car alarm that was going off. So we were trying to figure out why it was going off and we're looking at the car. And then we noticed that the driver's door was open. It wasn't wide open. If this is how it's supposed to be when it's closed, it was like that. It was open a little bit. And so I was like, weird. Okay. So we're looking at the door and then we see that, you know how if this is the window and then this is the car door, this part in between, it was kind of opened like that. So it's as if someone put a bar in there and pulled it and that's how they opened it. I don't know if that's how it works, but that part was sticking out. I don't know how to really explain it. Anyway, nothing was stolen. Not that there was anything in my car to begin with, but everything in the car seemed like it was the same. So it was just really weird that someone tried to break in on a Sunday at 3 o'clock, when there's people around. I don't know. It's very weird. Again, it could be completely unrelated. I live in a city, but also, why? Why on a Sunday? Why not in the middle of the night when there's no one around? Also, I know my car was locked because A, the alarm was ringing, so it was ringing because someone opened the door, and B, my car doesn't lock if all the doors aren't closed. So all the doors were closed when I locked it, so someone definitely did open that door.
I dated this guy that lied to me about his name, where he lived, literally everything. Now this guy was super jealous, so he would always make us keep our snap maps on. And he also wanted to start his own construction business, so I had helped him just kind of get it started and up and running. Well, a little bit into us dating, he had asked me if he could use my truck to take to work, and I told him no because I had an ex-boyfriend that did that and it just didn't really end up well and I don't feel comfortable with that. But he gave me this big sob story about how his truck wasn't even starting, and so he was missing out on a lot of job opportunities because of it. So I ended up giving in, and one day when he had taken my truck to work, I noticed he was an hour away from where we were living. Now, I thought he was probably just on a job, but I texted him and I was like, hey, where are you at? And he told me he was back at his house just picking some things up. I was like, oh, that's weird. It says you're in this town an hour away from where you told me you lived. And he told me the snap maps probably just didn't update because he was in that town, but now he's back at home. Now, I knew snap maps wasn't 100% accurate because he would always accuse me of cheating when I was at work, saying it showed me at a location like Panda Express instead. But I was really suspicious. So whenever he told me he was at home, I started to check his snap maps and noticed it was always a different location. But then I get a message from some girl on Facebook saying, hey, is this your boyfriend? And I was like, oh, that's so weird. I'm actually dating a guy with that same name, but he has a different last name. So she sends me a picture of this guy and she was like, is this him? So immediately my blood's boiling and I was like, yeah, why? What's up? And she was like, well, he's been coming to my hometown and been picking me up in this really nice truck he said he just bought. She said she found me because she checked his Facebook and noticed that it was my truck and just thought I should know. So immediately I text him and I'm like, okay, I know you're cheating on me. I need my truck back right now. He was like, I'm on a job right now. I can't bring it back right now. Well, I had to work both of my jobs that day, so I wasn't going to be home until 11 p.m. that night. So I just texted him and I was like, I need the truck back at my house by 11 p.m. 11:15 rolls around and he's still not there, so I call the cops. 15 minutes later, the cops do show up, but he had pulled into my driveway just before the cops got there. When he got out of my truck, I asked him for the keys to my truck and he told me he didn't have them. I was like, okay, then how did you drive the truck here? I know you have them. I want my keys. And so when the cops get there, I asked them to get my keys back from him. But the cops say that they're not allowed to search him. And this guy is talking with the cops, laughing, and just kind of making me seem like I'm just some crazy ex-girlfriend. So the cops do escort him off the property. And since I didn't have the keys to my truck, I couldn't drive it for a while. But when I did get new keys made, I tried to start my truck and it wouldn't start. Come to find out, he must have came back that night and took the battery out of my truck, I'm guessing put it in his, and then put his battery in the bed of my truck. So not only did I have to pay for new keys, I had to pay to get a new battery put in. I know, I used to date the worst men and I was the biggest pushover, but not anymore. So this girl I met at a party ends up pretending to be me and ends up drugging a guy. Let me start from the beginning. So I meet this guy at a party and I end up giving him my phone number. Now, I didn't give him my Snapchat, my Instagram, nothing like that. Well, I guess a couple days after that party, a girl had requested him on Snapchat, and the username was my name. And through Snapchat, she even tells him that she is me. So they're talking back and forth for a couple days, and she invites him over to hang out. But when he shows up at her house, he realizes that she's not me. So right away, he starts questioning her, and she was like, just come in, let me explain. So he does. And she goes on to tell him that she's just super insecure and she saw me and him talking at that party and she just thought it was the easiest way to get to know him. And he's telling her, you know, you're so beautiful, you don't have to pretend to be anyone else. But after this, he starts to get up to leave. And I guess she's like, well, just stay and watch a movie with me, have a glass of wine, let's just hang out and talk. So he accepts. And after one glass of wine, he ends up blacking out. So she drugs him. When he came to, she was on top of him. He notices that he's not wearing a condom and just feels super dirty about the whole situation. About a week after this situation, me and him are hanging out. And it's after the bar, we're back at his house, we're just chilling, and he's acting super weird. And finally, he was like, I just need to tell you something. And I'm like, okay, you know, tell me. And he keeps like going back on it, like, no, I shouldn't tell you. And I'm like, trust me, I have been through everything, you can talk to me. I can tell he felt a lot of shame by the situation. But finally, he ends up telling me the whole story. It took a lot of us talking for me to even convince him that he was SA'd. He was like, well, you know, I would have done it anyway. And I told him, well, you didn't get to make that decision for yourself, which means you were SA'd. And I think that's a common problem for a lot of victims, male or female. They feel like, oh, well, you know, I would have done it, or I kind of wanted it, or I put myself in that situation. No. If it wasn't consensual, it was SA. I don't think we talk enough about the men who also experience this. I feel like men feel a lot of shame. Like they're taught that they're supposed to just always want it. And sex is a cool thing and to get it is cool. I've even heard a lot of stories of guys being young and being essayed by a much older woman. And a lot of times they'll be like, well, she was a cougar, like it was cool. No, it wasn't cool. I think it's important that we speak out on both sides of this issue and that we don't make men feel like they can't speak on their emotions and they should just suppress them. Because this is an issue with men and women. This is an issue with society, and it's not something we should take lightly. Pressuring someone into it is not okay. Forcing someone into it is not okay. These are not things that should have to be said. They should just be known. So me and my boyfriend at the time had went to this concert, and my boyfriend told me that once the concert started, he was going to stop drinking because he wanted to be able to drive his car back home. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. So after the concert ended, like he said, he got in the driver's seat, he's driving us both home, and pretty much right after we get out of the concert, he was like, oh, I'm really not feeling good. I need to pull over. You need to drive. And I'm like, babe, I cannot drive. I have been drinking this whole concert. Like, I am not okay to drive. I can't drive. And we keep arguing back and forth because he's like, I really don't feel good enough to drive. And I'm like, well, suck it up because I'm not good enough to drive. Finally, I get frustrated and I get in the driver's seat. Such a stupid mistake on my part, and I'll never do this again. But what I didn't know is he saw that there was a DUI checkpoint coming up, and I didn't see it. So if you know anything about me, I'm literally the world's worst liar. I just don't lie because I'm not very good at it. So we pull up to this DUI checkpoint, and the cop asks us, have you guys been drinking? My dumbass says yes. I'm like, yeah, and then I correct myself, and I'm like, oh, well, I stopped drinking before the concert so I could drive him home. And the cop is just like, oh, my wife always does that for me. That's so sweet. I'm still thinking I was going to go to jail for even drinking at all because that's illegal. This freaking cop lets us go. So we drive on through and I am pissed. And I'm like, okay, now are you going to drive? He was like, well, they're still back there. Like, just keep driving. It'll look suspicious. I'm like, what part of I am too drunk to drive do you not get? First off, you completely set me up. You knew that DUI checkpoint was coming up. And he was like, yeah, but I've already had a DUI before, and I just knew if you got in trouble, it would be a slap on the wrist. At this point, I was just so frustrated. I literally just pulled the car over and got out, and I was like, if you don't get in the front seat, I'm getting an Uber home. Which is what I should have done from the start, but I guess I like to learn all my lessons the hard way.